All right, greetings everyone. This is Light of Tabor. I am your host, Mark Rattel, and today we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Michael Moeller in the building with us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, Michael.
What's up? My name is Michael. I am a ND in the profession. We make a joke. We say not a doctor, but I'm a naturopathic doctor. Went to school here out in California and converted to Orthodoxy in 2020. I gotta get those. COVID dates messed me up. I think it's
Yeah,
2021. No, 2022. I'm a year and a half in 2022.
very cool.
Yeah, so Catholic background, and I was trying to recall. I think you and I started talking on Instagram
Yeah,
first,
if I'm
right?
not mistaken, I think we did connect originally on Instagram. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, what then? I think we chatted a little bit on Instagram. I was in OC. You're down in San Diego, and when I was inquiring, I kind of visited a couple different churches, and you and I went back and forth, and came down, visited. You guys have a great church down here at St. Anthony's.
yeah. St. Anthony's Antiochian
Yep.
Orthodox Church. Yeah,
Yeah, and
beautiful parish.
I was baptized Antiochian at St. Barnabas in
Glory to
Costa
God.
Mesa. So, chatted, and then you and I have hung out several times, and we have a lot in common, a lot of fun things to chat about. So, plug for my channel. I talk more testosterone replacement and men's health and those things, but a mutual connection. My godfather, David Patrick Harry, he's got Church of Eternal Logos. You've seen his stuff. That's something we
Yeah,
vibed on.
that was how
And
I originally came to Orthodoxy. Was
was that your
Church of the
first?
Eternal
Was
Logos.
it your first
That
one?
was the
Like,
very
how
first
did
thing
you
I saw.
how did you find his stuff?
I came back from the high dose mushroom ceremony, that
Okay.
15-gram mushroom ceremony.
Yeah.
I came back and I just I was really asking God to kind of bring some clarity into my life because I felt so lost and confused after coming back from that. I was just kind of shell shocked. I
Mm-hmm.
literally felt shell shocked, and I was like, I need some direction, God. Like, where do I go from here? Like, what now? I know that wasn't the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back and do that. But what do I do now to move in the right direction? Because obviously that wasn't the right direction.
Yeah.
And then it just felt like the algorithm I just kind of came upon that. I had looked into Orthodoxy before, but maybe a year before. What I was doing, I was actually writing something. I was kind of in spiritual delusion, doing some spiritual writings, and I was trying to come up with a name for these writings. And I was brainstorming, and I came up with something, the Divine Manuscript. And I typed that into Google. Of course, arrogant.
Yeah,
You know what I
I
mean?
was
The,
thinking
the
that's
divine. That's kind of.
what's the Hermetic book where they fall into Atlantis? That's it's something by Thoth,
I'm not
but
sure.
it's a guy channeled it in like the late 1800s. It's it'll come to me, but he says that Thoth gave it to him, and it talks
Right.
about the fall to Atlantis, and it's a bunch of abstract, like we are one with the universe is one with us.
Right.
We've come through space and time to deliver these messages to you, the messages of the ancient past. Like, it doesn't say anything. It's
As
just like two. It's just like I try. Someone will know in the comments. It's like book of the manuscript of. I'm
Yeah.
actually want to really wish I would Google it because it's like by Thoth, and it's like it's some type of like the book of the Hermetic or blah blah blah. It's like one of
Right.
those weird plugs, but it's really popular
Yeah.
in the New Age stuff. So
Nice, nice. And then what happened is I typed that into Google, the Divine Manuscript,
yeah.
and what popped up was something about the Divine Liturgy. I was like,
Oh.
what's the Divine Liturgy? I'd never
Yeah.
heard of a liturgy or Orthodoxy at all at this point.
Yeah.
This is maybe 2019, 2020. And that was the first time I ever heard of Holy Orthodoxy. And right when I found that, I wasn't I didn't totally go into Orthodoxy. I was just like, oh, this is Byzantium. I
Yeah.
was kind of familiar with that to an extent, but it didn't really I wasn't full blown Orthodoxy at that point. It was just kind of a seed was planted, and it didn't come back around until I came back from that ceremony and then stumbled upon Church of Eternal Logos. And then it was right around that time, a few episodes in, I found it was a specific episode that really resonated with me and what I had went through at that high dose ceremony, and it was your mate Tom, this Australian cat.
Yes,
and he's
yes,
friends
yes.
with Dakota of Earth, and
Yeah.
they go and they do they host psychedelic ceremonies all over, and they travel all over the world, and kind of he had this ayahuasca experience where he kind of blacked out and got violent, and there was a bunch of people holding him down, and it was just I was like, man, that sounded like my experience.
yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah.
and he was like, this feels demonic. It felt like a demon was attacking me, and I was just totally out of character doing all these things, and I was like, wow, I can relate to that for sure. And it just really resonated with me. And he was inquiring into Orthodoxy at the time. I think he's veered off in a different direction. Your mate Tom, if I'm not mistaken, But that was my introduction to Orthodoxy and to Church of the Eternal Logos. Was that episode?
What was the date of your mushroom trip?
The date of my mushroom trip was I believe it was 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and it was like July. It was like right around Father's Day.
Okay.
It was like right around Father's Day. I remember that it was like in the middle of summer, towards the end, and Father's Day was the day after because I was having like this existential, just like breakdown where I felt like disconnected from my son. I felt like the memory of my son was being taken from me in that trip. That was like the worst part of my trip. Was I felt like a demon was trying to steal the memory of my son, and it was like we were leading into, there was a middle of the night ceremony leading into Father's Day, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That I was having that.
Yeah.
At that
but
time.
not it's symbolic, like, in whatever way, shape, and form, it definitely meant something.
Yeah, no, that definitely meant something, and it helped me. I was already all about my family, but I was even more so coming back from that, like hyper focused on like I need to be here for my son more than anything, and I'm grateful for the experience. I would not recommend it to anybody else.
Yeah.
I hope people can learn vicariously through me and not have to do it themselves, because I almost lost my mind out there. And honestly, if there was a cliff, I would have probably jumped off of it.
Yeah.
Ended up jumping into a fire. But if there was a cliff there, who knows what could have happened? I was outside of myself and being led by a spiritual entity that was kind of outside of me, and seemed like it was flowing through multiple people, like jumping from person to person almost.
I had that in Ayahuasca. There was a son-daughter, or a son and his mom, and they were sitting across from me, and he had his first purge, right? So a lot of people know in Ayahuasca, you drink usually it's like the medicine kicks in once you have your first throw up.
Right.
It's very interesting. It sends you into the, like, you go from like 0 to 10, you're at like a 2 or a 3, like the medicine's kind of, and then you go to like 7 to 8 to 10, like you're just
kind of catapulted into it, right?
And I think it's because your blood is flowing. Like, the thing about the medicines, I don't even want to call it medicine anymore. The
poison, right?
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is when you think of ayahuasca, and again, all of these things came to me after I did it. We'll get into how I got it, but I remember talking to Pastor, and I'm like, when you think of the Eucharist, right? You are partaking in Christ, and he is giving himself to you, right? And you're consuming him, and we are what we eat. And what's interesting about ayahuasca is the opposite. You eat it, and then it like requires you to throw up.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so you're sacrificing part of your own body to participate in the ceremony.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way of breaking that down there.
Like, dude,
it's definitely like an inversion going on there, some sort of inversion.
And one, you're definitely, it's funny when you think about it now, like, ultimately people are already in this place of delusion. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Here's an idea. I'm going to travel 2,000 miles and go into a jungle and take a substance that's going to make me slightly insane for 6 hours, and then talk to someone who doesn't know my language, knows nothing about my culture, nothing about who I am or what I'm doing, and then get advice.
Right.
Versus, I am in a small town. I have a priest that I see every Sunday that I confess to, who knows my mom like the back of his hand. Like, I kiss him when I see him, and I've known him for 30 years. Maybe I should go and get advice from him.
Right.
Like,
that sounds a lot more practical. Yeah, a lot more logical and reasonable. Yeah.
No, I'll just go to Peru and like trip balls for like a week, and then I'll know what to do with my life.
And that was my goal at that point. When I was in spiritual delusion, I was like, I just want to go so bad to Peru and have a trip. And like, that's why the closest thing I could find to that was going out to native land and having that high dose mushroom ceremony. I ended up finding out at a certain level, the mushrooms kind of take you into this similar places, like the DMT, and like it's like one chemical component off, if I'm not mistaken. So at a certain level, it's pretty much all the same realm that it's taken.
Molly, a lot of it's funny for me because I'm a naturopath by the doctor, so I got into it because I was interested in like MDMA, like in his research,
which used to be legal.
Yeah. Was it legal for? Yeah,
it was legal as like a sexual enhancement, like love kind of enhancement drug, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was sold on the shelves under that.
I got in. I met a guy maybe my second year of medical, first year, and I was into psychedelics. We'll get into that later, but I met a guy who had PTSD. He was in Afghanistan,
right,
and he had flashbacks all the time. And he did some MDMA, and he didn't have flashbacks for like 2 weeks.
Interesting.
And there
I've
is
heard
a
very similar stories in lots of from a lot of veterans, and that's who I was actually doing my ceremony was with all veterans.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. People coming from.
You're trying to. It's kind of like a reset, and that's where I haven't made up my mind completely about. This is all forms of medicine in general. I think that there's a time and place for anything. Like I've talked about. I'm on testosterone. I believe in testosterone replacement. People will argue about when is the right age. How does that work? I'm like, look, if it's funny because our society's like, hey, here's a 14-year-old girl who has like heavy menses and acne. They'll throw her on birth control, which is hormone replacement therapy.
Right.
If you're 23 and you have diabetes, they'll throw you on insulin. You have high blood pressure. But it's weird. And I'm just like, look at the big picture. It's like, why is testosterone the one area that they're very hesitant?
Yeah.
It's almost like they want weak med. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, so we can give all these other meds. And you can, and that's kind of, I would say, also what my opinion was in the beginning, at least of psychedelics. I'm like, this is this hidden, plethora of magical things that can cure everything, and the big pharma doesn't want us to know.
Right, I was on a similar path, and I actually at one point even thought it might have been like the hidden Eucharist. Lord have mercy on me for that.
Yeah, you blasphemer.
Yeah.
No,
that's what I thought.
Terence McKenna. The Soma. I remember reading that. It's like, what is the Soma? And
there's books written on exactly this subject. Yeah.
And Patrick, he had videos.
Oh, he was going in a similar direction. Yeah.
So it's easy. Yeah, I'm not obviously. I'm throwing.
Oh yeah, of course.
Funny shade. Yeah. Like I was the same way. Like I thought this is for me. I got into psychedelics because I wanted a physical, spiritual experience. Which is now that I think about it, that contradicts itself.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I throw shade. Like when I was a kid, I was born and raised Catholic, and I remember at some point we'll get into these other things, but. One of my Lutheran friends, and we're talking about going to church. He's like, "Well, you don't have to go to church on Sunday." I'm like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Yeah, you're saved by grace through faith. You don't need to go to church. Like that's all made up. Your own." I'm like, and I was like an 8. I was like 8. I'm like,
this doesn't even. Something's not linking up here.
But you get how like you'll meet a evangelical, and they'll be like, I was addicted to drugs. I lost my job. I was suicidal, and Jesus came to me in a dream. And I talked to Jesus, and Jesus showed me how Jesus is, the Holy Spirit came to me, and now I go to, Bob's church down the corner, and that's where Jesus is, and I remember being like, born and raised Catholic. I go to church 4 days a week, and my grandparents pray the rosary every night, and, I'm looking at church history, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, how does this, how come this person gets to have that experience with Christ, and I don't?
Right.
Not knowing, I'd say they're in spiritual delusion, just like anything else. But me, I'm like, well, this must all just be bullshit.
Right.
Honestly, I'm like, I thought like that's kind of how I lost my way. Is I'm like, I listened to this person who, in my opinion, isn't holy, and who am I to judge? Like, but you get from an Orthodox perspective, it makes sense from a like, if Theosis says something or Seraphim Seraph says something, like I believe Seraphim Seraph saw the Theotokos.
Yeah, 100%.
This guy down the street. I'm gonna be, I saw Mary.
Some healthy skepticism, that's some healthy skepticism to have.
It's hard, when you don't know nothing about nothing, figuring out like what's the discernment, and you're probably similar. You just, this all must be BS. I'm just gonna go to agnostic, go to this other side.
Right.
And that's what happened to me, and that's where like I'll argue, talking about Protestants now. I'm like, you're this whole sola thing, like I'm not convinced it does more than good. Like you got these evangelicals on the corner in Oceanside here, and they're walking by, and I'm like.
Yeah, well, they walk up to you, and what's the first thing they say? Are you saved?
Yeah.
And I had one of them walk up to me at a Walmart parking lot, and I was looking for. I love collecting Bibles, no matter what the translation is. I like getting them all and comparing them. Of course, I've got the Orthodox Study Bible, which is I highly recommend anybody that doesn't have that pick it up. And
we got one right here.
Got it right here.
Keep it straight.
Speaking of,
Yeah.
And he was like, "Are you saved?" And I was like, "I'm Christian." And I took the Bible, and he's like, glory to God. Yeah. And I went about my way. But it's like, I don't feel comfortable saying I'm saved because I don't know that I'm saved. I don't know. I should be striving for salvation daily through theosis, through daily prayer, through daily repentance, through engaging with the sacraments, the holy sacraments that they offer in the Orthodox Church. And, this is a daily struggle, and it's something that's not ever really guaranteed to us. And to think that is prideful.
Yeah.
In the pure, it's spiritual pride, and I think that's one of the that's the sin that we need to look out for most.
Yeah, amen. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
And I mean, I've been there, and it. I would say it's kind of easy to refute about like, okay, again, it depends if they're Calvin. Like, do you have free will? Like, if I
Right.
have
What
free,
form of Protestantism are we speaking to?
yeah,
Because that's a very broad
yeah. I don't mean to
spectrum.
throw shade at anyone in particular,
Right.
but you get like, if free will exists, right? I can choose. There's a process like I on my own way. Obviously the Orthodox, to my understanding perspective, is we are saved through grace through faith.
Yeah.
It's not my own works.
Right.
However, it is a precondition to myself. Like I tell people like I'm a doctor, right? And you come in and you have a disease and you get better, and I'm like, wow, you sleeping all the time saved you, right? It did.
Right.
But it wasn't just the sleep; it was the eating, it was the relationship, and it was all these other things. So yes, faith through grace through faith. Like there's nothing I can do or decide that can save me. I 100% will recognize that it is the gift of God who's just said, hey, Michael, you have the opportunity now to decide through your actions. And there's, I think it's in the book of James, and I can't quote it off.
The book of James, man. Yeah, that's a powerful one.
That number one, they asked Jesus, like, am I saved? Like, I think, like James and John's mom come. He's like, that's not for me to decide. Jesus will be the one who judges us. But there's a verse about like, number one, no one knows the hour of the day.
Exactly.
And then also there's one about like, I need to, I should have these all be able to ramble off, but it's about like, you don't know if you're saved or not. There's a verse that specifically says that. Like,
yeah, and then there's
who are you to know if someone is saved? It says something like that. I think Paul even says that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they get into that in Orthodox theology too. That we're not even. It's not our place to even judge other forms of religion and people, because it's ultimately up to God and up to the condition of their heart.
Yeah.
And one of the best ways I heard the whole salvation through faith and works aspect explained to me was I can't remember who said it, but it was somebody that faith and works work synergistic. It's in synergy together to prepare our hearts to receive the grace of God.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best, most simple ways I've heard it explained.
Well, and in the West, we have such a problem with semantics.
Right,
okay, so
exactly.
here's one: sola fide. Mm-hmm. If you are, you committed infidelity, what is that? Right? You're non-faithful. Right? Faith is an act. Faith is not. The problem with the soul is it's like, I believe Jesus. Good. It's like, yeah, you can say you believe in your relationship with your wife.
Right.
But if you just said, hey, I have faith, and you sit on the couch all day, faith without works is dead. There is a level of like faith is an action at the end of the day. Like Father Deacon Ananias told this story. There's a book. It's called The Rope. And it's like this guy's on Niagara Falls. Have you heard this?
I haven't heard it. No.
So this guy's on Niagara Falls and he walks across the tightrope. And everyone's like, and then he's like, cool. And then he puts a barrel and he walks across it. And everyone's like, and then he puts like a dog in the barrel and he walks across the tightrope. And everyone is like, and then I think he's like, you guys believe I can do this blindfolded? And everyone's like, yeah. And then he does it and he's like, okay, now who has the faith to get in the barrel? You know what I mean? Like everyone says it, but it's like you don't have faith. Like you said, you believe, but like faith is walking the wire to being like, do you really believe in Christianity? Then you would be terrified. You should wake up every day terrified. And I mean that in a good way. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, knowing that my salvation is on the line every single day.
Yeah.
And that Satan is out to trick us.
Yeah.
For sure. So like, and this is what we see in this whole New Age thing is where people get so deluded into thinking like, it's just love, bro. Like, they think like, and not to be a black pillar, but like the devil's real. He's a roaring lion, and it's like this is. Well,
I think the black pill is a necessary step to like you have to have this kind of like harsh reality, kind of like something that punches you out of that spiritual delusion. I think that's definitely a necessary step coming out of spiritual delusion. I think there needs to be like a black pill segment that you go through, a portion where you just kind of like this harsh reality is presented to you, and it kind of shocks you out of that spiritual delusion and makes you look at things from. Man, I was moving in. That's what happened to me that night. I mean, that high dose ceremony. It was like I realized. I mean, I was put in hell. I was brought to actual, literal hell, and my wife experienced the same thing. And it was just separation from God. Yeah, it felt like it felt eternal. It felt like it was going to be eternal. It felt like I could never get out of there, and it was just so thick darkness that consumed all the lights. All light was. It was just like it was, or blocked out. It was like a blockage. Yeah. I felt like I was in a portal of just.
And see, people don't get like that experience that you had
Yeah.
And you know what that's like, and I know what that's like.
Right.
And to think like this is never going to end, dude. I
It
cried
felt like that.
like
It
when
felt
I
like I
go up
was.
for communion and
Yeah.
we're singing that for His mercy, and I'm like, I remember, you know, on my ayahuasca trip with my face on the ground, being like, this whole universe is effed. You know, I was fully nihilistic. I didn't believe in God. I'm like, we're screwed.
Yeah.
I'm going to be trapped in this place. And it isn't
Right.
until I had the proper worldview, be like, yeah, you were in hell. Michael, you were as far away from God as possible. And the other thing people don't get is like, there is a point where you get so far away, you cannot return.
Yeah,
Like
and it's not God putting you there.
Yes.
It's our decisions
Yeah.
taking us to a place where we are separated from God. It's like, and that's one thing I heard Father Deacon Ananias break down was this like this kind of concept of like, how can you end up like he broke it down in the way of you're wandering out in the countryside and you go onto somebody's property and you pick an apple from their tree.
Mhm.
They have the right to shoot you.
Yeah.
Like you've wandered into spiritual territory that's not yours, and it's
Yeah.
not. It belongs to the evil one,
Yeah.
and it's like you're under the control of his minions now. Like you're under his. You know what I mean? It's just like
Ignorance is no excuse.
Yeah. And ignorance has no bearing on the reality of what you just stepped into and the consequences of what you stepped into. You still have to face that, whether you knew what you were stepping into or not. There is a consequence for even wandering aimlessly onto somebody else's property, spiritual property.
Yeah.
You know?
And people fall into a spiritual delusion of thinking they're God and being like, well, that's not fair.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was like, you don't get to make, this is the big thing, is like, you don't get to make the rules.
Exactly.
God made the universe.
Yeah.
He's perfect in every way, shape, and form. And trust me, like,
and that's a harsh talk about harsh realities to come to. That's
Mhm.
a harsh reality that you need to come to before you come out of spiritual delusion. You need to.
Well,
you don't get to decide all that.
Well, and on my end, I got pushed far enough that I thought I was God and realized how screwed we'd be.
Right. I wanted to get
Yeah.
into that because you were telling me about that in the past one time. We were talking about your ayahuasca
Yeah.
ceremony. I thought it was really interesting that the experience you had. If you wanted to go into more
Yeah, it
details
pushed me, pushed me all the way. You know, really at the end of the day, like to pick up on my story, Catholic, and then, these people are like, well, Jesus came to me in a dream and saved me. And I'm like, BS, that didn't happen to me.
Right.
Like why did God come to you? I'm like, you're delusional. Like,
right.
I honestly, I don't understand how the spiritual realm works. I've never had that happen to me. But
right.
You know what? Let me try and figure it out. Like, and again, how delusional am I at 18 to be like, I'm going to go find God,
Yeah.
So I'm an undergrad, and then obviously, I'm getting hit with this, woke stuff. You're right. I was an undergrad, 2009, and I got the whole like, hey, you're a white male, your opinion doesn't matter. History is written by the victor. You're white.
Right.
The Crusades were solely about Western Europeans invading the Middle East. Nothing about, Muhammad coming up and attacking the Byzantine Empire. Antioch.
Nothing about the Ottomans or any of that, right? Yeah, we're gonna leave that out.
Yeah, we're just gonna go straight into the first, second, and third crusade and how evil Western Europeans were. They did bring up at least that the Western Europeans sacked Constantinople. You know what I mean? Like, that is something that Rome forgets to talk about how they're in the right. It was like, hey, remember when you guys like killed us?
Yeah.
It's funny too. A lot of people, I don't know if you're familiar with, was it the Cognac Wars? 1520s.
I don't know if I'm
Lutherans
very
attacked.
familiar with that.
Lutherans went to sack Rome. Pope Clement.
Oh, I'm not super familiar with that.
So I don't know. There's a band called Sabaton. They're a cool like metal workout, and they have one. The song is called like "The Last Battle." Where it talks about the Swiss Guard fighting off these Lutherans that came in to kill the Pope, and those German. There's like this is Reformation time, 1526, and all that stuff. So I'm just saying, look, there's blood on everyone's hand.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Lutherans or any Catholics have plenty of blood. Orthodox, we have blood. Like, and you can try and defend it in different ways, shape, or forms.
Right.
But it does cloud things. When you're 20 years old, and whether or not I was firm in my convictions, I still heard it every day about like what atrocities were committed to the Native American and all these. And again, I'm still like, bro, these Native Americans were slaughtering each other. And like again, like I'm Polish German. Like, I'm not Spanish.
I'm German, French, and Irish myself.
Yeah,
so.
like bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, so I'm floating through undergrad, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And I worked at a GNC, and I had a Qigong guy come in. And I was big, dude. I was in natural medicine. I'd come down with interstitial cystitis, which is a whole other conversation. So I kind of healed myself.
Right.
I started getting into natural medicine. and that's when he introduced me to energy work. And I remember hearing about chakras and all these things, and then I found out about astral projection. That was the home run.
I got into that. Into that.
Robert Monroe, Dreams Out of Body.
I haven't read. No, I
he was
didn't
the
delve
big
into
one,
that.
man. Yeah.
I didn't delve into that. But I was doing astral projection.
Yeah.
I was delving into lucid dreaming and
Yep.
astral projection, and I was messing with mugwort and wormwood
Yep.
and getting all crazy with the herbs. And,
Huperzine, like taking different herbs to try and induce it.
yeah.
I'd wake up, I'd sun stare, I did all this juice fasting,
Right.
sit in my toes in the grass, have my chakra and crystals,
The grounding, all that. I was all
dream
into
journal.
it. With the, yeah,
you had to have a journal to like remember everything. And
the clear quartz crystals. I was charging them under the full moon.
Yep.
Like I was going full force Kundalini yoga. I was
Yep.
crazy. I was crazy with it.
And it worked.
I know, no, there was direct results, very immediate results, and that's the thing. That's the thing that can suck a lot of these people in. Is it's a very instant gratification based kind of work that you're doing.
Yeah,
and that's the difference that I've noticed coming into Orthodoxy. It's not instant gratification, but it's a slow burn, and it pays off more in the long haul.
Yep.
And it stays with you, and it's not as fleeting. The other stuff, it's very instant gratification, but it's fleeting.
Yep.
And it's gone just as quick as it came.
Yeah.
And you're looking for that next fix, man. You're chasing the dragon again. Literally, the Kundalini dragon, serpent dragon, you're chasing it. And you're welcoming it into your Muladhara chakra.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to know where that's at. You know what I mean? So, like, but yeah, back to your story. I don't want to get too. I don't want to derail you there, but
we always tangent.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of giving the framework. It was like, I was Catholic. I was born and raised in a pious family.
Right.
The post-Vatican II stuff, and this is what's so funny, is it all comes full circle. You know what I mean? Like, I eventually come back, but I don't realize it at the time, but it's all important for my story later. You know what I mean? Like, my mom was born in this, early 60s, so the post-Vatican II stuff was just taken over. Like, my mom told me, she's like, I remember going to church, and I was mad because my Aunt Monica was her older sister, and she remembers having a veil. And mom's like, next year I get a veil. And then, no, they got rid of veils.
And then they got rid of the veils.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what I mean? That was post-Vatican II.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of changes.
The on the tongue. And I grew up Catholic, and there was still some of those, second Advaticus, or whatever they call the...
Sedevacantists?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Sedevacantism, where they deny the Pope, but they're still Catholic, but you can't really do that. So, right?
Sorry, Taylor Marshall.
Yeah.
But you can just see the conflict of like, and again, this is what I'm saying. Is like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why does this person think this? And even in Catholicism, there's just like, in Orthodoxy, we have it now.
Right.
But I'd say Orthodoxy does a better job of dealing with nuancing. Like, nuance is going to happen. Like it does. Like, this is why we have church councils. The thing with Catholicism, it doesn't make sense. It's like, well, why doesn't the Pope just fix everything?
Right.
And then you see the opposite in Protestantism is like, you're your own Pope. Like, I'll decide.
Everybody's their own Pope, yeah.
And that's kind of your only option. You're like, do I trust the Pope or do I trust myself? You're like, both are.
Well, there's a royal path in between there. The third option that a lot of people aren't knowing about, and I think that's the.
But did you know about it growing up?
I never knew about Orthodoxy, and I went to Catholic school, and I was like, they never told me about the schism.
I don't remember.
They brushed right over the Great Schism, and I had no idea that Orthodoxy ever existed until I found it on my own. The way that I told you.
Well, and I remember hearing about it, but again, I always thought and I remember there's like, oh, that's like a weird like.
I knew about Orthodox Judaism, but I never knew anything about Orthodox Christianity at all.
And I thought it was like, in which it kind of is. I did have a proper idea. I'm like, oh, that's like old school Christianity. They never changed, and like they're very similar to the Jews. Like they didn't get with it. That was kind of my ideas. I'm like, they're just like this weird. And again, I will throw shade like as an American. I'm like, oh, that's backwards Middle Eastern people who never got up to the New World.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, is that you get where my mindset was?
No,
I'm like, oh, that's like tribal third world Christianity.
Like you have to be a specific like ethnicity to even
but just more like it never, more like it never developed. Like they didn't. But I didn't think it through. I mean, I think like, oh, maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's like they don't have piano, they don't have an organ.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no instruments in the choir whatsoever. Just all vocals, which is actually beautiful when you really hear a beautiful Orthodox choir chanting through the liturgy. I mean, there is nothing.
Amen.
Nothing
well,
like
and that's
it.
like you're saying. I don't know about you. When I first came, it was kind of different.
Yeah.
Now, like the other night, I was laying down listening to some monks chanting. But before 10 years ago, I'm listening to T.I. and like 50 Cent, and like now I can't even listen to that.
Yeah, no, I have a reaction if I listen to I definitely think I still believe one thing I've carried over, and there's something to frequencies.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
there's a certain frequency to the chants that are being chanted in the church.
Yep.
There's a certain frequency to the trap music that's being played on the radio. There's a
Yep.
certain, you know, and it puts you in a certain state of spirit, and it puts you in a certain state of being, and it almost leads you into certain types of action.
Yep.
You know, there's a certain type of music they play at the club, and it's not Byzantine liturgy
Yeah,
music, and
yeah.
there's a certain type of action that happens at the club, and it's not humility and prayer and bowing down to the Theotokos
No.
or Christ or anything of that nature. You know, it's like it's degeneracy, and that type of frequency promotes that.
Yep.
It goes hand in hand. And it,
You know, you follow Brother Nathaniel?
Brother
You
Nathaniel,
know this
yeah,
guy?
oh yeah, he was a former Jew,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. So he did. It was funny. And again, I don't think about these things. Um, you know, I remember probably 2010, like David when I was getting an experience.
Yeah,
That kind of
yeah, the
comes into this.
reptilian agenda
Yeah,
aspect.
which made, and again, in all honesty, is real. Like they're demons. Like what does a demon look like? What is the snake?
Interdimensional demons.
What is a dragon?
Yeah.
They're reptilians. Like
Right.
there's patterns.
And the inner earth aspect, there's some stuff going on there too, man. There's some crazy. I mean, like Hitler was obsessed with hollow earth theory and Antarctica.
Yep.
And that's something to like. He knew something. He knew something that other people didn't know. And there was I don't know. We're not gonna go.
I mean, he was into the occult.
Yeah.
We know he stole relics.
Oh, yeah.
And he knew like the Indiana Jones and Temple. Like that
Oh,
stuff's
dude.
real. Like
It
the Ark of the
is.
Covenant.
It
you
is.
know,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
things. The relics of Paul healed people. The bones of Elijah healed people. Like we as Orthodox, we recognize that.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. No, we 100% recognize that in the Orthodox Church. Yeah, and that's a whole new. That was kind of like a whole new aspect of Christianity for me too. Is like having the bones sealed into the altar with our names as our church was consecrated.
Yeah.
We were actually there for the
I'm sad I
consecration
missed that.
of St. Anthony's Antiochian Orthodox Church. We had bones from St. Raphael of Brooklyn.
Wow.
And yeah,
Wow.
and there's some other people too, some other saints. And yeah, just really cool.
Which
really
is
awesome.
occult magic. You know, like it's not, right? Because magic is like doing your own will. Like it's God's will. This is God, how we are being in alignment with what he's asked for his creation. And we
Exactly.
can decide to participate in that or not.
Right.
You know, and that's why, music is magic. And it was funny because I think Brother Nathaniel's thrown a little shade at Father Josiah a couple times.
Really?
Yeah. He did. So Father Josiah has a course on the demonic, and he's like, we need to know the demonic. And there is and again, I'm not a priest. I'm not trying to speak out of line. I'm a layman giving my own feedback.
Right.
I have seen demonic activity. Like I have seen people speak in tongues and channel dead people. Like I've been in,
and that's
the
demonic
occult.
activity for sure.
I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to brag, but
Right.
I've been about as far as you can get, like where people needed exorcisms, like full on. I had an ex-girlfriend that would speak in tongues in the night and channel dead people. Like
Lord have mercy.
yeah.
That's intense.
No, I've been, and I'm saying like I've been there where my friends were like, "Bro, you need to get away." Like, what are you talking about? But so right, Father Jai has the course on demonic. But in Brother, I'm just going to bring up 2 points. He had said something about like, "You do not need to be learning
the way he talks.
Yeah, Brother Nathaniel, the demonic should be up to the demons." You know, like.
Yeah, dude, he's very theatrical
Yeah,
with
he's-
like it's a thing, man.
Yeah, no, he's good, and I love his stuff, and
Yeah.
I think he was, and I don't know if he was necessarily throwing shade. There's a level of like not necessarily clickbait, but there is a level of engaging in, right now with the whole Peter Ears and the baptism thing. Like there are topics that get attention, and he says like Brother Nathaniel made a video like a week later saying like, don't get caught up in that. All you need to do is focus on Christ. You don't need to study the demons. And there's truth in both of those.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. But Father Josiah had made a video about Anthony Oliver's Rich Man North of Richmond. You've heard this.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with the song that's like, it blew up.
Yeah, and it was great, and Father Josiah did a video talking about, music, and it's, look at the chants in the church and how, we're doing psalms and da-da-da.
Right.
And, I'd say overall, Josiah does a good job of, Father Josiah does a really good job of like bringing the meat out of topics and not getting too controversial. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like he can, like with baptism, he's just like, you should talk to your bishop. Like, leave it at that.
Right.
Whatever. We can stay off that topic. But
Yeah.
Brother Nathaniel had said something about like, he went more into controversy. He's like, look, this music is used to invoke your passions. And it does. Like, you hear that song, Richmond, you're like, Richmond, North, you're like, yeah, like these guys are screwing us over with their taxes. Like,
No, and I see Brother Nathaniel's point
Yeah.
in that regard. And
but Orthodox music doesn't really do that. You
Yeah.
know, I remember
well,
coming.
it doesn't inflame the passions.
Yes.
You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It brings peace. It's more of like
Yep.
peace in your heart, like kind of what you're looking for when you're praying. Your prayer rule. You should be looking for peace of soul.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like Saint Sarah from the Sarab says, acquire the spirit of peace, and thousands around you will be
Amen.
saved. You know,
Yeah. Pray for us.
right? Yeah.
But that was a big barrier for me. Like when I came back, I'm Protestant coming, like, and I was kind of refishing and looking at these Catholic and even Orthodox. I'm like, people here don't smile. Like, I want to go to a happy church. And again, this is this Protestant mindset of me deciding what the church should look like. And after talking to priests, they're like, well, what if we're doing that and someone just lost a loved one? You know, the church is
there's a certain reverence to be had there, and you don't know what somebody could be going. Different people are going to church, like, after they lost a loved one, after they lost a child, and that's not a laughing matter. No. That's not something they would smile about. That was something they would be, you know, in tears, bowing down, prostrating about, probably. Yeah. You know, that would be the proper position.
And that makes sense to me. It was funny. It's like, though, in my mind, I'm like me judging the church. Like, well, church should be full of laughter, and church should be fun, and we should have Hillsong, and like da-da-da. Like, I get that. I'm just saying, like, you know, going through my journey, when I talked to them, I'm like, look, I get that. I was there. I went to the hill. Like,
I struggled giving up the gospel music for a while, like the Protestant music. Like there was some pop and music coming out for a while. Like it was good but it was like, I don't know if it was spiritually good. It was just well-made music, and it sounded good, but it was very worldly. Yes, it was like pop music. Yeah, and that's what it was, and it was like, and that's what the altar represented in the Protestantism that I had been fed. I was going to a non-denominational church, and there's an altar call, and that's the moment where you're saved. Is like when you raise your hand, you make the declaration of faith, and you come to the altar. But the altar isn't really an altar; it's a stage.
Isn't that funny?
And that's something that I got from Father Josiah. Yeah. And I thought that was such a good point. It's like there's an altar call, but there's no altar to come to. You're coming to a stage, and there's usually a smoke machine and some lasers and a band playing. That's the reality of their worship, and it's just when you kind of see that, you step back outside of it, and you can kind of see it for what it is, and it helped me. But you
can't if you don't have the Orthodox Philotimo.
If you don't have the Orthodox lens to see through, you can't. It's really hard to put all this into. You know something's off. A lot of people are in it. There's a lot of people in it that are like, something's off here, you know. And then I would hear the prosperity gospel. You are a king's kid, and I was like, I don't know about this part. I'm gonna be quiet in this part.
We are.
I was like, I feel like I'm not gonna be. The Bible's not promising me money if I like have faith. I was like, I'm pretty sure the Bible told me there would be like a bunch of like struggles, and like I'd have a cross to bear. And
how did that work for the apostles?
Right?
Were they all rich and
look at the ways they all went out. They were all martyred in some of them in very grotesque ways, you know. And it was not fun, and it was not prosperity. No, you know, it was
prosperity. And this is what's so funny though. Like, you and I know, you got to flip it. Prosperity for our soul.
Exactly.
Prosperity for my growth.
Spiritual richness. Spiritual prosperity. Yeah. No, because we don't. What we're the goal, the reward we're looking for doesn't come in this life. It's not going to come in this. You know, a lot of people are looking for to save the world, and it's, you know,
you can't. Christ already did.
Exactly.
The games, he already did it.
Exactly.
You know, but we want that. I want to be. You know, I grew up watching Superman, Goku. Like, I'm going to save the earth. It's like,
of course.
No, bro, you're a side character. Yeah. You know, like, sorry, like Jesus is fighting the devil.
Exactly.
The best you can do is like bring people to the club. You know, which is the ultimate form of humility, which is the ultimate form of fighting the devil, because he wants you, you know?
Boom. Well put. Well put. That's super well put.
And that's all, like, but, you know, back to that music, it's all about that riling up your passion. And, you know, again, I'm connecting this into the story about, like, that's where I was in my early 20s. Like, I want to feel good. I want to feel God. Like, and again, how I didn't realize how arrogant I'm. Like, God should talk to me. Like, he made me. He owes it to me to talk to me. You know, Lord have mercy on me. And now I think about it. And it's funny, like I tell people, you know, atheists, I'm like, okay, if you went to prison tonight, do you think you could call up, you know, Biden or Trump and they'd come and get you out? The president of the United States could, okay, no. Okay, how about the mayor? No. Like your neighbor may not bail you out. But what's so funny about Christianity, which comes to the story, is like the king of the universe would though. Like,
Exactly.
wow, like Jesus Christ, like God himself, the person that created this universe loves you enough to come. And it may not be in the way that you want.
Exactly.
Which is even harder.
Yeah.
But, I'm in this, like, I'm in my early 20s and, I'm fed all this this atheist BS. And, what's funny though, I took an ancient Greek philosophy class at that time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I learned about the Logos and I took, Plato and Aristotle, and I was just seeking.
Right.
And again, this comes full circle, Patrick, when he brings up the Logos in 2019, literally, 10 years later. And I'm like, I know about the Logos. I took ancient Greek philosophy.
Right.
But yes, I'm playing with all these.
Sounds like God's providence, like leading you in a specific direction, and these things kind of popping up along the way.
Like when I'm going up for Eucharist, I cry. I'm like, how did you find me? Like I was trying to get so far away from you, and this is where, like, when saved by grace through faith, for sure. I would tell, like, I didn't do anything. Like I if anything, I can say is I stopped rejecting him. Is the best, and that's where again, when you talk about sola fide, it's like, okay, you can definitely lose your salvation. I don't know who, like, there are some Calvinists predetermined. Like, you're telling me that if I know the gospel, God loves me enough to allow me to reject it. I believe that. Like, if I just don't want to, and I have friends, and it's like, that's hell. But God loves me enough, he's a father, and you want to leave the house, he's not going to hold you against your will. And at the end of the day, that's the kind of the lens I view. And it's funny, is like there's so many real world lenses that's how God works.
If you take away free will, like,
what's the purpose?
Yeah, it doesn't really. What's the point, like, of making a good decision?
None.
Like, you're not. You were forced to make it.
Yes.
You had no.
You're a
you
robot.
See what I'm saying? So it's like, there's no. You
Jonathan Peugeot has he's done this 2 or 3 times talking about theosis and and its contraction to substitutional atonement. And, and dude, he does such a good job. He's like,
oh man, he's so good.
On one hand, we have this God who creates us and we're bad, but he wants us to be good, so we can't be good. So he makes himself good, and then we do bad things to him. And it is through us doing bad things to him that then we become good, but we're still not good. But then we need to worship him even though we're bad, and our worship is bad.
Right.
It's just arbitrary. It's like, this makes no sense versus the idea of, like, God makes us and he wants us to join him in his divinity, but he wants us to use our free will to choose it.
Like, theosis.
I'm like, that was what I'm saying. That was a big turning point with I'm like, that makes sense to me.
Yes.
Like, the other one doesn't make, and that's, probably like, oh, I'm covered in the blood of Christ Jesus. Like, this whole, right. And again, that was one where when I got more, and I didn't really know Protestant because I was raised Catholic.
Exactly.
So when I go through my ayahuasca, which I'll get to, I'm just making a long way, around my story. Like, when I was coming back, and the first time I heard one of this non-dom, it was funny because I was going with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and she was Catholic, and she went non-dom, and we didn't, a lot of non-doms and a lot of they don't even talk about theology.
Oh yeah, no, they steer far away from it, and they stay very far away from church history.
Like, is this pro LBG? Is this like women like like they don't touch? But I went to a non-dom only male, and I didn't know was that their policy, or is that just how it happened? You know what I mean? And they're like, we're Bible believing, no women, blah blah blah. But then I remember she told me about the solas. I'm like, what? We don't have to do work? And again, I understand it's not my works. It's me taking actions that join me and help me get rid of bad decisions.
Yeah, we're not saying we're saved by works at all. Yeah, no, we're saved by grace. But the problem is where you try to separate faith and works.
Yes,
because they're synergistic, and you can't separate these things. They just don't. They're not meant to be separated. They go hand in hand.
And that was his argument was the chicken. Well, if you have faith, you'll do good works. And
yeah.
And then
I've heard that too. I've heard that argument too.
And I get that. So, like, let's say that you come to me and I'm a doctor and you want to lose weight. You need to have faith that the diet is going to work, or you won't do it.
Right.
I agree. So you can say that's at least the first step.
Yeah. But
you still then have to do the diet.
And the problem is, I've seen people adopt that equation, and and the fruit of it is usually not very It's not. It's very. It's. I don't want to say rotten, but it's not good.
Well, I don't have to go to church on Sunday.
Yeah. It usually opens up the door for people. Yeah. It usually opens up the door for people doing that. Yeah. Only going once a month, only going here, and then you have the aspect of, like, how did I receive the Eucharist? It wasn't the Eucharist, or it wasn't even a sacrament at all.
A cracker.
It was like it was a cracker, and it was grape juice, and it was like that was once a month. And I feel like that also opens up the door for that to be possible. I think it all goes hand in hand, and it's like, and that also opened up the door for me to stay in the New Age. I was like, and delve into microdosing, and it was just that weak theology of just like it left cracks for all kinds of heresies to seep on through. Christian heresies and also paganism.
Yeah.
To seep on through as well, which is very prominent in the New Age, and it's occultism.
But people don't even realize that. Again, you don't realize it when you're 18 to 20, and again, this all goes together because you don't realize that you're pagan. Like I'm getting up and worshiping the sun.
I didn't realize I was pagan.
Crystals, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how I didn't realize. I was just like, in my head, I was like, I'm just tapping into my Celtic roots, and I'm just trying to figure out where I came from. I'm just trying to figure out my roots. I don't know what this is, but it was paganism.
Yeah,
100%. Like I was delving into druidry, and just like that's how I got into. And I learned some good things. I learned about herbalism and making teas. And there's certain aspects that I've carried with me that are beneficial to me, like physically. There's tinctures that I learned how to make, you know what I mean? But the fullness of truth, these are little nuggets of truth that the evil one feeds you sometimes, and then he'll kind of throw a little twist at the end. He'll give you like 95% truth, maybe, and then that last 5%, the last 5%, he'll twist it. He'll throw this twist at the end that is not beneficial for your soul.
Yeah,
like, it'll throw you into just like an absolute despair and madness, and it's scary out there. It can get crazy. But glory to God for guiding us back on track, and the Orthodox Church for being here to carry on the traditions that Christ showed us through the apostles. Literally.
Yeah, and without that, it's funny because you look at the church in general, and people say, well, it's invisible, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, let's say that we removed the Orthodox Church. I view that as like the last form of these other churches are going to just fall apart.
Right.
Like
no, you could already see it.
Yeah.
With the one world, the government, and the one world religion being established right now over there in the,
Well, and to your point about herbs and all that stuff's great as long as Christ is in the middle. It's like, why am I like, why am I doing this? Like, why do I want to lose weight?
Right.
Do I want to lose weight because I'm vain and I want to bang hoes and I want to, make more money? Or am I, no, God gave me this as a temple and I'm supposed to do the best that I can with it.
Right.
Same thing with, medicine, money, all these things.
Yeah.
Why was I personally was doing dream work and sun staring and these things because I wanted powers. To be honest, I wanted to be psychic. Yeah. I'm like, dude, I looked at Carl Jung and I looked at all these. I'm like, dude, these people predicted the future. And
right. Yeah.
Like, I want a lucid dream so I can like envision my life and manifest. That whole. Like,
I was trying to tap into the Akashic records.
Yes.
I was literally trying to do that.
Me too.
Because
they tell you this has all the information of the universe. You can astral project and fly. And I'm like, dude, I get the lottery number. I can do. I can figure out. Free energy techniques. I can bring in the utopia.
You like Nikola Tesla, right? Yeah.
That's what he did. Dude.
Yeah. No, he did.
Yeah. I mean, did you know he was his dad was Orthodox?
Yeah, I did know that. He actually come from a lineage of like Orthodox priests, and he got a blessing from his father to not be one because of his inventions that he was delving into at the time.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah. I did a whole like thing on it.
It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
But in any way, shape, or form, like was it blessed? Was it demonic? Was it? He's one of the probably more controversial people out there in general. Like, was it of God? Was it some a modern day Elon? I think most people with decent set of eyes would at least be.
And his company's named Tesla, right?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. I think that most people who have their eyes open are at least skeptical. At least,
right?
Like the things he's doing, like you may not say, "Hey, demonic." He wants to do the neurochip. He wants to do like.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, Neuralink, dude, like that. I mean, what's more demonic than that? You want to put like the internet in someone's brain, basically.
Mark, they're doing it so people like Stephen Hawking could walk.
Right.
Did you know that if everyone in the earth had a Neuralink, there may be 3 more people that could walk? So all of us should give up our right to our internal privacy of our brain so 3 people somewhere can walk. Don't you want that? Don't you want that?
I'm a sick man.
You're a sick man. When I was in med school, I argued against universal health care. And hear me out. And one of my friends was like, you want people to die. I'm like, okay, universal health care. Does that include me? Our tax dollars are going to go to everyone. Do they get to go to a naturopathic doctor? No. Then that's not universal. Like what? Like yes, am I for quote unquote? Yes, if that was what's on the table. But what's on the table is pharmaceutical primary care doctor. You don't get it. Those I was trying to tell them, I'm like, look, this is going to put us out of business. If there's universal health care, who's going to pay $300 to come and see me when their insurance covers everything? And their insurance doesn't cover health. It's sick care. It's not universal health care. It's universal sick care. And that's what I'm saying. You have to like think like they play this like devouring mother like trick on you. Like, oh, she's like this. Literally, she's like, you just want people to die, don't you? I'm like, no, I don't want us to be drowned. Like, do you realize this is going to be the end of us? Like, who's going to come in? Who's going to, I wanted to say her name, you know, Stacy, who's going to come and see you when you're in, they're not, we already have that issue. No one says like, do you take insurance? Like, no, I'm like, oh, sorry. Like with that, it puts another barrier up for us, if that makes sense. And so people, you have to just kind of, but society shifts things in a way, like they give you the narrative before they give you, right? They tell you how it tastes before they give it to you. Oh, this is going to be great for everyone. Like look at universal health care in Canada. It's an absolute catastrophe. And I'm not saying that we don't need insurance reform, and I'm definitely not saying we need healthcare reform because we need that,
right? For
sure,
right?
Like the healthcare issue in our like, it's terrible. It's absolutely horrendous. And you know, like me, I had a guy. I think I showed you. Like I had a comment. I did a video and there was 150 comments, and someone's like, "You need to be answering these comments." And I'm like,
I saw that. I saw you.
I'm like, what do you want me to do? Sit around all day and answer people? Like I'm already giving away free information.
You're a doctor and you're online, and it's like you're a busy man.
Well, and not only that, but I'm just like, do plumbers go around and like look at your stuff for free? Do accountants
do busy doing work? They're busy. They have to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm just saying, like, this gets into this like pretentiousness, this like I'm owed things, like, and I'm saying this gets into the Enlightenment and Protestantism and the Papal, and like Orthodoxy is the opposite. It is about, and I some guy, we got into DMs, and I'm just like, look, dude, as a Christian, I wish I could give away all my things for free. Dude, I have not had a 6-figure year. I'm a doctor with $250K of debt.
Right.
I've not had a 6-figure year. I'll give you my taxes. So like, don't come and tell me that I'm not here trying to help people.
Right.
And I'm called, and like, trust me, I'm called to help people. Yeah. And again, in the perfect world, I think it should be everyone's like 20 to 30% of the time helping people, not like this weird chunking. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. Hey, I'll do, with tithing and all this stuff. So side tangent to,
one thing I want to say is with the herbs, like what I noticed coming to Orthodoxy is like it was a proper getting things in their proper place.
Yes.
I had like herbs. This is creation. So I think what I was doing is I was elevating a lot of creation above the Creator, above God. I was putting things, I was looking to the mushrooms for what I should have been looking to Christ for. Yeah. The truth. I was looking to the mushrooms. I was looking to a piece of creation for the truth. Yep. I was looking to, I wasn't looking to the herbs for spiritual healing, but they have a certain place. The creation has to be under the Creator. It can never take the place of the Creator, and it should never be on the same wavelength of the Creator. It should be under it. And that was something that was a big learning experience coming out of that psychedelic new age madness. Like that was one of the main things I took away from that was putting creation in its proper place under the Creator, and I wasn't really worshiping creation knowingly, but I think I was falling into a certain.
Well, you were probably trying to use it.
Yeah.
Like for me, when I think about crystals, like I can remember thinking, I'm like, just do anything. But I remember, like, I put a quartz crystal under my thing.
Well, here's the thing. Check this out. You have oscillators in your cell phone made from clear quartz crystals, and those are used in cell phones. They're used in computer. They're used in like all forms of technology, and it has a clear quartz crystal in the oscillator, which is in these things. I don't know how to make an oscillator. I was trying to figure that out too. I was like, I'm gonna make an oscillator. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. That's a very tedious process.
But were you convinced you're like this crystal? Like okay, like if I have water,
right?
I put water on my hand, it makes my hand cold.
Right.
Versus like you have a amethyst. I'm like, this is going to increase my psychic ability. Or I have a jade. Jade's going to make.
Okay, yeah. See, that's taking it to another level there, because clear quartz crystals actually have like certain practical uses, like in reality, and then you're getting into like, making teas. I was getting into like alchemy and like where do you draw the line? Like cooking can be like, But I think when coming to Orthodoxy, it helps you really put things in their proper place. It helps you really, and also having a prayer life and a spiritual father that you can speak to, which is something that I got from Orthodoxy. I didn't have a daily prayer rule until my spiritual father gave it to me. I didn't have a spiritual father to come to get advice from until I came to the Orthodox Church. And that is something that I feel like everybody who's alive needs. Yeah. Everybody, you know?
and they put things in those perspectives. Like, you realize that everything comes through God, right? That's the kind of thing. Is like, look, the mushroom,
Yeah.
and Christ says that. He's like, when
Creation in here without a
right,
creator.
was Pilate's like, dude, I could kill you right now. And Christ is like, the only reason you have any power is because God has let you.
Exactly.
I mean, you have no power. God could take it tomorrow if he wanted to, and there's nothing you could do to stop him.
Yeah.
And that's the same way when you look at things of the world, and this is where you get in this humble place of like, really, like, have mercy on me, a sinner. Like, I don't control anything.
Yeah.
Like, like, I can move my hand right now, but I could not stop God from, having a flesh-eating bacteria eat my hand in 3 seconds. If he wanted, like, God,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's possible. Ultimate. It's happened.
Yeah. And so when you look at that in the New Age, if you put those things in perspective, you get to keep it. Like, what did the wise men bring Christ?
Frankincense, myrrh, gold,
and
right?
and this shows that there's a proper place. Like, gold should be brought to God. It's not better than God. You can't buy God. It should be used as a sacrifice.
What a great example. I think that's the perfect example of creation being put in its proper place, because it's being brought to Christ.
And that's the nativity. Like, so it's so funny. It's like, as you come out of the New Age and you look at, okay, is astrology real? I personally do believe. Obviously, the moon affects menses.
But it's the proper place.
And what happens when Christ is born? The stars point, and there's a Psalms. It says all the stars point to you. Like, it shows Christ is the center.
And the Psalms are so informative when you really like listen to what they're saying and even chanting them daily. Powerful stuff in there.
Yeah, and it shows, and it just the wise men did know astrology, but it pointed them to Christ.
Exactly.
All these New Age things, like, I don't want to say we're wise men, but similar and I think that is a search for truth. I think most people, like, dude, go to an agape meal. Like, if I don't care if you're Orthodox or not,
go to an agape meal. Seriously,
you're gonna find weirdos like you and me. Like, every time you can just go up to, like,
sit down and talk to anybody. They're gonna be
like us. Like, most of the people. I know there's some people that argue about or angry about the young converts. But,
right.
Most of them have.
I haven't met any of those at my parish.
I haven't either.
It's been a beautiful experience. Glory to God.
It's not what the online articles say,
right?
These Orthodox extremist young men. I mean, at the end of the day, to me, I just meet a bunch of guys searching for truth, and that's ultimately, like, I went through my cycle. Like, why? Again, I'm doing my crystals, and I'm doing my dream, and I just want to know God. Like, I wanted to do an astral projection because I wanted to experience a metaphysical thing.
Right.
Like, I'm like, how, like, you and I can talk about, and then not only that, but what's so funny is, like,
something beyond this world, something beyond this physical reality that you knew.
And again, the issue becomes, like, you really get into epistemology about, like, subjectivism. Is like, you can tell me you astral projected,
right,
but I haven't. So who's right? You said you saw Bigfoot. I haven't. You really get into truth claims, and I didn't know this at the time, but I was just, talking. And again, I remember, like, even still in my early 20s, like, trying to figure out this Jesus thing. And I'm like, so some guy 2,000 years ago dies, and for some reason that affects me. Okay, what like, what does the price of tulips in China in 1432 have to do with me? You know what I mean? Like, what those are just two unrelated things. I could say a lot of different things. I could say that when Pluto is in direct alignment with Uranus, that your heartbeat's going to stop. Or, I mean? Like, those just, like, I'm like, how does Jesus have anything to do with me? And and there's just this, like, well, you just have to have faith. I never got those good answers.
Right.
Until you get to Orthodoxy.
Yeah, that's a very cop out answer.
Yeah, well, you just have to have faith. But as I'm battling with those things, again, why I wanted to go in Ayahuasca, like, I wanted to David Icke, and I found Grant Hancock.
See, that's the thing, because you're going through these steps. You're going to Protestantism. You're looking for the answers, and it's very unfulfilling, and something's off, and then that's kind of.
Well, I didn't even get to Protestantism until after the New Age, because I got convinced of Christ.
Right.
That made sense to me.
Gotcha.
So Catholic, I kind of leave that. I'm doing all this New Age stuff. Graham Hancock, Ayahuasca. Oh, wow.
I was all about Graham Hancock for a bit too.
Ancient aliens.
I think a lot of guys got sucked into that.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to, which is so
make
funny.
sense of it all,
and it's symbolic. You're like, aliens, other worlds. Like, did you ever get into Pleiadian stuff?
It sounds familiar, but I don't know if I delved very deep into that personally.
I mean, this is the same thing with Shasta we were talking about with Seraphim Rose, that they believe the Lemurians, like the Atlanteans.
Oh, okay.
The
I think I've
Atlanteans-
heard something
The
along
Lemurians
these
lived
lines.
outside the Pacific Ocean, and they were around with the Atlanteans, and obviously there was a great flood.
Right.
And this is what's so weird about Orthodoxy is you start looking at the ancient gods, like Thoth. Looks a lot like a cherubim to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? You start looking at like the Nephilim. These were Nephilim, right? All these ancient gods existed. In my opinion, they were real. Thoth, Seth, whatever, like they're Nephilim. And the Great Flood is probably what ruined, like, and again, whether or not it's this particular of details, I would argue is not that particular. But when you want to talk about like who talked about Atlantis was Plato, which was 300-400 years before Christ, if I remember right. So there was a flood sometime before him that ruined a civilization. And like this sounds exactly like Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
And so these things match up when people are like, well, this doesn't match up. That is like, what are you talking about?
It actually does.
It matches up perfectly. I'm like, there was people are like, well, they had technology that was super powerful and blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, this sounds. And then what does it talks about in the book? It's in Genesis that when they slept with the demons,
the
daughters of men,
the fallen angels slept with the daughters of men,
and then gave them technology.
Yeah,
and like this is like, I'm like, wow, this is what I'm talking about. Like as I come out of the New Age, I'm like, this is what I learned in the New Age. You know what I mean? And like incense, except we're doing the same thing in Orthodoxy. Herbs, frankincense,
right?
Like all these things, and again, a lot of them are inverted because they're just pointing at the right place.
Yeah.
And so, I'm in all that New Age stuff, and that's when Jordan Peterson came on, and I liked a lot of his. Dude, I ate up his stuff.
I was eating it up too.
Dude, all his personality and development course, I've watched every single one on YouTube multiple times, probably 2 or 3 times. Same thing with his Maps of Meaning course. All of them. I've watched every year he's done it because there's slight differences. And then I watched all of his biblical series like 2 or 3 times. And then I found Jonathan Pachot.
Very cool.
But in that is when I was doing, ayahuasca. And before I got into Peterson, I had went down the Jungian, Nietzsche.
I went down the Carl Jung path, super hardcore.
Yeah. Well, and that was
the Red Book. It's all about like his subconscious mind, kind of like.
And I had those
coming into the forefront.
Like, I still have them before.
That relates to like lucid dreaming stuff. You know, totally.
Yeah, and it's real. That's the one thing where people are like, I'd say from a major, like maybe evangelical or even Catholic, they just like that stuff. No, that's demonic or it doesn't exist. Like there are people who are like, no, exorcism, that's just in the movies. I'm like, no, I've seen them. They're actually real. Like that. Like and the Bible tells us that's what's so weird, about them. Like Jesus cast out some demons and the apostles cast out some demons. Like that stuff happens.
Yeah. So it's very clear about it.
Yeah, and so I'm wandering through the New Age, and that's where I'm doing all this New Age stuff, and I'm like, okay, ayahuasca is like the thing, right? That
was like everybody was talking about ayahuasca, man. It was the thing. That's what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do it, and it's like the more I found out about it, I was like, man, like puking and pooping all over yourself. I don't know about that aspect, because I already have like a bad stomach issues at times. You know what I mean?
Yeah. To be honest, like I've done it, 12 times. So like at this point, to be honest, like what I told people and still tell people, like from a visceral standpoint, it's not bad. It actually feels good. It actually is one of those things where
like a cleansing aspect.
Yeah,
right?
It feels like you've had a thorn in your side, and it's kind of like inducing it. To be honest, it's like it feels like you are stabbed, and then finally when it's released, and then you go into the dopamine and serotonin hit. Like that's when the
trip starts kicking in. Once you start kind of
purging, that's when it hits, and it's like then you're.
And I've heard people like some people purge and they see like visions of like shadows, like demons almost coming out of their mouth, like purging negative demonic energy.
Yeah,
something to that aspect.
I had a guy tell me as I was purging, he said that like he was hallucinating, and I turned into a demon. Like I was like a big demon dog, like as I was throwing stuff up.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I have too many stories I can tell you. Like I think the couple that I think are worth mentioning in this, like, working my way back. The first one I'd say would be, so I go to naturopathic medical school, and obviously that's a prime environment for New Age.
Oh yeah,
very liberal, very loving, the dissolution of boundaries. Like and it's so funny that in the Midwest I was liberal, and then I moved here I'm conservative. It's one of those things like people forget, 20 years ago, if you didn't give your kids shots when they were young, you were a hippie, liberal, vegan.
Exactly.
And now it's the opposite.
Yeah, no, it's the norm now. Well, if you're, if you know what's up.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying is like 20, 30 years ago, you'd say the opposite. Like,
Yeah.
I'd say most, I don't know. I don't know the Orthodox perspective because he had people like, St. Paisios saying things. I don't know. I wasn't here. But I'd say as a conservative Catholic in the 80s, everyone gave all their kids their doctor visit stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Where now most conservatives are like, hell no.
Mm-mm. Well, yeah, the COVID thing definitely shifted and opened up a lot of people's eyes to.
Yeah. And with, Robert Kennedy coming out, giving some of that, information. So, yeah, again, I'm out of undergrad. I move out to California. I get in the new age. I'm dealing with all these stuff. I, get my hands on some mushrooms. I might do some MDMA, do some of these other things. And it was funny because I was mad. So I move out to California, and a friend of mine comes to me. Michael, you heard about this ayahuasca before? And I, this is like, I've known about it for 3 years. I don't know how to get it. Do I go to Peru?
Right.
Do you remember Amber Lyons?
That sounds familiar.
Her company was called. She got molested by a shaman.
Oh Lord, have mercy! I might have heard that story.
She was on Joe Rogan, and she was on. She had a company that was like that. It was all about like doing it safely because there's been a lot of people that get molested.
I've heard stories.
Yeah,
even before coming to Orthodoxy.
Yeah, Amber Lyons was her name, and
sounds very familiar.
I'm like, dude, I can't speak Spanish. Like, what am I gonna do? Just get on a plane and again, you can look at this place. It's $1,000 for the week, and here I am, like, dude, I'm poor. Undergrad student, I got $30K worth of debt. I'm going to go to medical school and try and live in California. Going through medical school, I got to pull out max loans.
Yeah,
they give you like $20,000 to live. Like, so, my friend, like after my first year of medical school, comes to me. He's like, I was at towards the end of first year, and he ends up marrying one of my friends. He's like, what do you know about ayahuasca? I'm like, I've heard. I didn't want to be like, and splurge on them. I'm like, yeah, you have Banisteriopsis copii. This is the MAO inhibitor. You have Beckner's shrub, which is the high form of DMT.
Right.
MAO, like, I can tell you chemical makeups. I know how long, last 6-7 hours, where you do it, how long, they use a different shrub. Like, usually they can use them in most, like, and I'm just like, yeah, I've heard it's, like a spiritual thing. He's like, yeah. So our mutual buddy was in Costa Rica, who's into yoga, and these guys are about 5 years older than me. And he's like, yeah, he did it, man. And he's like, it was awesome. And he knows a guy here, he knows a shaman here in Southern California.
Locally, okay.
Yeah. And he's like, what do you think? He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about trying out. What do you think? I was like, take me. I was like, yeah. So I'm gonna take my spouse with me, and we're gonna go and do this. And I'm like, well, cool, man. Let me know how it goes. And me, like, this is what's so funny is I look back, I was like, F this guy. Like, I have been struggling for 3 years to find this.
You were like jealous in that moment, right? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I deserve this. I'm dream journaling. I'm juice fasting. Like, this experience is supposed to come to me. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He's gonna walk into this. He has no right. And so whatever, he goes and he does it, and he has a pretty good experience. He comes back and says, yeah, dude, I'm gonna get a group of guys. We're all gonna go do it. You wanna come? Oh, heck yeah. Right. So I do the whole diet. We show up, and it's in the church. It's legal. Like, it was legal. It was with the church and everything. And I show up, and I did the vegan thing for a week.
Right.
I feel terrible.
Yeah.
I'm in medical school. I'm already not feeling good. Just long nights.
Yeah.
And this one guy shows up. And I remember we have like a circle. We're chatting, and the one guy's like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I just heard this. Oh, my battery's running low.
But it's still going for now.
Okay. So he again, he's like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I just heard this was cool. And again, this guy's gonna get wrecked.
Right.
This idiot. Like, I fasted all week. I'm gonna have a major spiritual experience. I'm so ready.
Through.
I'm gonna talk to God.
Right. Yeah.
So I sit next to my one friend, and he's there. There's a room full of us. I do the first cup, and I just feel hungover, like it's been fasted, and I'm just like sitting there, and people start throwing up and doing. How good are we on time?
I think we got like probably like 10-15 minutes.
Okay, left. I'll try and run through these two stories.
Yeah, no worries.
And again, I think these are important because I'm sitting there, nothing's happening. And I remember, I'm an hour and a half in, people are throwing up, people are crying, people are saying, I'm literally like sober as a bird.
Right.
And I remember my buddy, and he's a lot bigger than me, and I hit him. I'm like, bro, what's? He looked at me. I'm like, it's like, how's this work? He's like, he looked at me. He's dude, his goo-gooed eyed. And he's like, what do you mean? You just take it. I'm like, I don't feel anything. He's like, you don't feel anything? I'm like, no, I don't feel anything. Oh, I don't know. And he, we get a second cup, and so I go up there, and I literally, I'm just sitting in my yoga pose for hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours. I think it's probably 3 hours, and she offers another cup. I go, and then she's like, anyone ready? And I literally stood up and I walked up, and she looked at me like I literally could like take a test, like I have fully cognate.
Yeah.
And I sit down. She goes, "How are you feeling?" I go, "I don't feel a thing. Like I actually feel like maybe I had like a cup of coffee. That's about it.
Like super sober."
And she goes, "Okay." She pours me a big one. I take it and I go and I sit down. And the only thing I remember is feeling like hungover. And I remember we had a energy healer who was there, and she was singing. And as she was singing, I had a flashback.
Icaro or the Icaro.
Yeah, the Icros. Yeah. And she was in her. This wasn't an Icros. Actual Icros. This is like some new age BS.
Right. Like some knockoff.
Yeah. She's a beautiful singer.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's really good. Okay. Ukrainian.
Right. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And I just remember sitting there feeling miserable. And I heard, and all these other people, blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking, I flashed back to I was like 4 years old. I was in the Midwest, and it's humid and hot. And I remember getting hit with a breeze. But this wasn't any different than any other experience I've had. Like, you ever lay in bed and think about yourself as a kid? And, I had a flashback.
Totally.
And I remember feeling this breeze hit me. And I was like, and I was feeling like her, like, it was kind of spiritual. I was like, I felt like this breeze was hitting me as she was singing me, like a frequency. I was like, that, I remember that. And then I remember seeing an eye with a tiger stripe around it, which that felt like it wasn't from me. That was about it. That was about the whole experience.
Felt like it came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, so I go up for a third cup. No one else, she gives me a third cup. I sit down. I try and sleep. I'm like, maybe that will help. Nothing happens. I get up. We go back in the room, and everyone's bragging about, oh, I saw like this thing, and there's a dragon. I saw this, I saw my mom and I healed her trauma. And I'm like, I didn't see shit. So I go back out there and I meditate again for like an hour, and nothing happened. And I go outside, and this is like secluded in the middle of the wilderness. And I look up in the sky. I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm like, this is all BS. This stuff does not work. It does not matter. And these guys are all delusional. Like, I'm the only sane person in the world. Like, I kind of thought that. I'm like, everyone else is just nuts. And whatever. So we go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and we do a share circle, and everyone talks about their experience. I'm like, I don't know what to say when it gets to me. I'm the last one. And I'm like, you know what? I felt, it's good to be here. I appreciate everyone sharing their experience. And that was it.
Yeah.
And, and I didn't want to say something about the experience because I kind of thought that it would hurt the ego of the shaman if I said the only good thing was her,
Right.
And then I kind of like, I said, you know what? One last thing. I go, your music was beautiful. And I felt like the school, blah, blah, blah. I felt like an ocean breeze. And I think I said that inadvertently. And she goes, oh, well, that's because I was singing the African Goddess of the Ocean song, and it brings cool healing breeze. And this is like, wow. I didn't plant this. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh,
that's interesting.
And I did that, and I go, oh, and then she started laughing. And she's like, yeah, I work really good with the Tiger Mama. I work really good with the Tiger Mama energy. And I was like, what's the only, I'm saying, the only, I'm like, who's the, and then the shaman started laughing, and she goes, I'm the Tiger Mama. Like, when people see me in my spiritual form, they see me as a Tiger Mama. And I was like, and I didn't say anything to anyone. You know what I mean? I was like, you know what I mean? Like, that kind of like, I'm like, dude, there's something
going on here.
It gave me hope. Right. It did. It's like, there's a metaphysical thing kind of going on here. So I'm like, right. And that's why I came back, 2 or 3 more times, because I'm like, okay.
There's something to be found here. I was obviously like grasping at something, just kind of like, touching the edges of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, okay, and that led me into these other experiences. So I want to double.
Let me plug. You know what? I'm going to plug in the charger real quick.
Okay.
Let me plug that in.
Plug that in, and I can tell. Yeah. I'll just keep telling my other story. I mean, you've heard it before.
Oh yeah. No, that one's really good.
So yeah, I never told you that one.
I think we like started
breached,
into
yeah.
it last time. Breached,
but
I got the fullness of it.
Yeah, it gave me the fortitude to continue. I'm like, it gave me some hope, and like, okay, maybe the metaphysical realm is real. Maybe there's something outside, because I was really a materialist. I was a pagan materialist. I was trying to play these non-materialist game, which I know now that I don't have the right to do that. In that worldview, really, at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So whatever. Then I do a second one, and dude, the second one was awesome. The second, and this is, dude, this plays in because he hooked me. The second one, I have the chakra. I have like visions and colors. I feel like I'm on opium.
Like out the crown chakra.
Oh,
like,
dude,
that's like the top one, the purple one. That's why I learned in Kundalini, right?
Yeah, red,
the corona,
green, yeah.
corona in Latin. Let's not get into that.
Yeah,
that's
crown.
Another.
The crown, which is a false crown. There's only one king.
Exactly.
But I did. I had the whole, like, I took it, and like I had colors, and then I had this experience. So I was in my chakras, and like as I was in my chakras, like red is the base, and that's earth. And I had this experience of like, what is my experience with religion? What was like my relationship with my parents? How's money? How's my stability? And then I went into orange, and then I thought sacral. I thought sex, and I thought, what's my relationship with and I thought about like women that I'd been with, and like, and then yellow, and I went through, and then I had like warm feelings, and it was awesome. Like I was like, this is awesome.
That's what you were looking for.
Yes.
You were looking for that
yeah.
real spiritual experience.
Yeah,
something.
and I had that, and then I got hooked, right? And then I go back, and then I started having terrible ones.
So you're like chasing the dragon at this point, like trying to get back to that initial breakthrough experience.
The first one, like, and what was weird is though besides the second one, most of my revelations happened outside of the ceremony, which I would say was God's grace. Like, right. At that time, I'm like, oh, like now that I'm looking at it, so I think it was my third one. My third one was when I had my first like bad trip. I had two really, really terrible ones, which I've told you, a lot about. And so like, I'm trying to think which one happened first. No, I do remember which one happened first. I remember I took a major dose, and I felt like, and again, you and I, being in that space. For people who haven't been in that space, it's not like when I say I had a vision. It's not like you're watching a TV show. It's like a visceral
almost
feeling.
Like, well, I don't know. I'm careful with the pineal third eye thing, but it felt like a vision that you have, kind of like similar to lucid dreaming, like in between. It's almost like a dream, like a waking dream.
Yeah,
that would be the best way that I could explain it.
Yeah,
it was like a waking dream kind of vision. It's like somewhere in between having a dream and being awake, and it's like that, like lucid. Right? It's kind of lucid. It feels like a very lucid kind of vision.
But it's not like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no.
But it's not
it's
really
a very in between kind of state.
Yeah. So I just like sense. I like to try to walk. People are like, "Oh, I had a vision." It's like I didn't see it because you only see with your.
It's almost
eyes.
like you see it with your mind, with your mind's eye.
It's almost like
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I tell people is like, you ever felt like you're being watched? You know what I mean? That except into a major experience, it's
right?
Like, it's like, but you don't see the person, but you have a feeling, right? So to me, all my psyche, there was a feeling, right? So I had a feeling. Again, I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
That I took a major dose, and I kicked the door. I told you, like, I wanted to talk to God because I'm still like, so I have this experience.
One, I thought this was a very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and two of them are, the other one's the house. This one is like, I kick the door open. I'm at the top of the universe. I feel like I'm in Star Trek. But like, if this is the universe, I was at the outpost. I was at the place that saw everything, like heaven, for the lack of a better term.
Right.
But in my mind's eye, it's more, again, symbolically, I recall it more like an outpost, and I think about like Star Trek, which is alien, which is the machine, and I didn't really think about them as machine elves at the time,
right?
But I remember I kicked the door open, and I'm like, all right, I'm here. I want to talk to God. Where is He? And again, it's like, imagine you walked into the Star Trek base station, whatever that's called,
right?
And then there's like people, and it feels like they're working. And I'm like, all right, who's like, and everyone ignored me, and they kept like working at their computers, and I'm like, who's in charge? Like, I want to talk to God. I need to know like the secrets of the universe, why these things are happening. And I almost get a little bit anxious talking about it. Like, I throw my cross, which will come on. And they're all like, "Sir, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Where's God?" They're like, and they looked at me and they're like, "But sir, you're God. I'm not trying to blaspheme. This is what happened in my experience. I'm not God."
This was your psychedelic experience,
and it told me, it's like, they're like, "You're God," and I was like, and I literally, like, I felt the veil. I'm like, whoa, no. I can't be God because I don't know what's going on. If I'm God, like, no, this can't. They're like, but sir, you're the Brahma. You're the ever, I was into yogas, and like, you are the ever knowing. Like, you just forgot it, but you are God having a spiritual experience now. I'm like, guys, that's not good. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to create planets. I don't know how to create trees. I don't understand physics.
Exactly.
And I remember then falling, and I remember, like, I felt like, now I think about the verse when I saw
Lucifer falling, right?
like lightning.
Yeah.
And I literally felt like I felt like a free fall. And as I was falling, I was like, oh my God, I'm God. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how the universe works. How is this going to happen? Like, this can't be. And then I'm like, Michael, pull yourself together. I'm like, okay. Love. Like, love makes, and I fell into this subjective, right? I'm like, if I'm God, nothing, and I don't know what's going on. So therefore nothing can matter because I don't understand. Morality is just made up. And I was in this whole like new, like, people don't realize it until you put the pedal to the metal. Like a guy like Sam Harris doesn't, like, your morality is completely subjective.
Yeah.
You don't understand it. It's not rooted in a transcendental. If there's no God, anyone can say anything. Like abortion, like all human life's valuable. Oh, is it? Then why are you aborting babies?
Right.
Like, you can't. And then like, well, like, okay, now you're nuancing. You're just making stuff up as you go. And then you get into Nietzsche and the will to power. It's like, well, whoever makes the rules, whoever has the gold, and then Marx has, like all these things. Like, I studied all these things. I'm like, well, Marx says it's all about money. It's all, which is about, and Nietzsche's like, well, actually, it's about power, right? And Freud's like, well, it's actually all about sex. I'm like, what? And like Christ, obviously, when I get to is like make sense of all this. So I'm falling, and I'm like, okay, love makes sense of the world, truth, love. And I had like a voice, and it's like, you only think love matters. That's subjective. Like, for some people never feel love, and I'm like, what? I'm like, no.
Don't diss me.
Yeah. And then I'm like, okay. I'm like, my mom, my dad, my parents, my family, they love me. And it's like, some family members rape other family members. Some, I was like, and like, sorry, Lord, have mercy on me for saying this, but I was under demonic attack.
Yeah, definitely,
100%. And I'm falling, and I just feel like, and I finally just like wham, and I hit the floor. And then I remember I kind of came to, and I'm back at the ceremony, and I'm looking at everyone, and I was so bitter. I looked at everyone, I'm like, pardon my French, I could say, I'm like, you all beep beeps, you don't know nothing. Like, I'm God, and this universe makes no sense. You're all screwed. You think you're doing something? Mark, over there tripping? You're doing work. This is all meaningless. Like, I felt I was completely nihilistic. I'm like, none of this mattered. And I go, worst thing about it is, I believe that we're going to be here forever, and there's no purpose. Wow. Like, this is hell. You know what I mean? I'm like,
that's despair, nihilism.
Like,
right
I'm
there,
like,
for
literally,
sure.
I'm like, okay, and like the worst part would be if I'm God. Like, I'm like, we're trapped in this universe. I don't even know how to turn this game off. Like, I'm telling you, like, I was in.
Makes it even worse.
I was
from that perspective. Yeah.
I honestly feel like it was hell. I don't know. Like, you could say physical torment. I was like, this. I believed I was God, and I believed that this universe was going to exist forever, and I didn't know how to turn it off. Like, you get how scary that is?
That's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
There's nothing more terrifying. Like, I still have flashbacks, and I'm like, I didn't think about it at the time. I still have another bad trip after that. But now I think, I'm like, okay, that worldview is wrong. It has to be. Like, the thing that makes sense, and like, you can have that worldview of nihilism, or you can say, okay, no. I'm not in charge. Whoever created this universe is a heck of a lot smarter than me. And what's more beautiful is he loves me. He loves me enough to become human and then die for me. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, when I watch,
love,
bro,
love,
in actual love. And that's where I like, if love is subjective, like, no,
sacrifice.
What is real love? And that's what I'm talking about. When I go up to communion, I'm like, I remember being broken on the ground during that ceremony, thinking like, there's no purpose to life at all. And then like, I'm like, as I come back to Christianity, I'm like, he makes sense of all of it. Right. Like, I'm too dumb. Like, it is the ultimate, like, I'm arrogant, dude. I think I'm smart.
Right.
I think I'm really smart. And then it was the ultimate humiliation. You know what I mean? And it was the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me.
That's beautiful.
And I'm telling you, I go up to communion and I think, God, you could have left me. Like, I blasphemed you. I thought I was you. I was laying there broken, and he shepherded me. He came and got me. And here I am, like, walking up to communion, and I'm still a sinner. I still have a lot of work to do, but I'm like, wow,
and it's
this
like
game
you have
is
like
real.
This flash of like, this is where I came from, and now I was searching for. I thought I was searching for that.
Yeah.
I thought that's what I was looking for, and it's like, but really, I was searching for this right here, where I'm at right now, and it's like, how did I get here? I have that like, kind of like, I don't know what to call it, but it's like this shocking realization of like, I'm here. Like, there's still tons of work to do. I'm not like saved. I'm here. I'm not saved.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it. Theosis. It's a daily struggle, and there's still so much more to do. There's still so much more repentance that I need, and more aspects of myself that I need to work through. And it's a beautiful journey, and it's the struggle is 100% necessary.
And that's what's so funny is when you arrogantly look at the universe and say, well, it shouldn't be designed this way. You know what I mean? Like that's like physicists. You've heard the guy, the rock falls down, he pushes it up.
Right.
Like it's so weird because intellectually, I kind of came to the idea of Christ, meaning like, okay, so
if I had a similar,
you know what I'm saying? Like if whatever I just thought of has to be wrong or we're screwed. Like I'm going to live in a subjective universe where I have, and it's like,
well, I think it's necessary for people. I came from a very prideful background. The New Age aspect, the self-help aspect. If you heal yourself in a certain aspect, what is that going to feed? It feeds your pride like crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like certain people with certain, I know I needed that intellectual. I was intellectually going crazy trying to figure it out. And I needed something to kind of like put it all into the proper place. And also, but then there was a certain point where I could only take it to a certain point. Mm-hmm. There's a certain point where the intellectual can only go so far. And then it really has to come down to faith and prayer and doing the work.
Yeah.
You know, doing that, and usually it's really basic stuff. It's like finding God in the simple things, in the daily things that people overlook.
Yeah.
And doing the prayers and you don't want to do the prayer roll, but just sticking with it and doing it and learning the chanting and learning just delving deeper into it and finding beauty in the things that are overlooked on the things that other people may see as monotonous or just boring, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And these there's so much beauty to be found all over, you know. And coming into Orthodoxy, it's just shifted my perspective of everything around me, my family, and the way I interact with my family, and just, you know, it's beautiful, man. It really it was a necessary shift.
And you have to, because if you don't shift, and this is where you're looking at the game, and you know, because a lot of atheists would be like, look at this God, he's judgmental, he does all these things, and it's like, if the world's gonna flood, you better learn to swim. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get to make the rules.
Right.
And you can even say it's not fair that God did X, Y, and Z. Your only way through the game is to submit. It's it. Like, whether or not you like the rule, like that's part of, like, we're in this universe. The game of spiritual warfare is happening.
Yeah.
You don't get a choice. Like,
the other route only leads to bitterness,
and it makes it worse.
It's like that. You get to that point where it's like you're in nihilism. That's where eventually, it may not seem like that at first, but the end game, you take it to its fullest extent to the end goal, you're going to end up in nihilism and despair.
Yeah,
100%.
And it's like, it's same thing. Health. Like, people are like, well, I don't want to have to work out. You cannot. You know, I don't want to eat healthy. I don't want to, like, I don't like. Well, then you die. Like, you're gonna
you're gonna choose your hard. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that, choose your hard. Like, you're either gonna do the hard work to stay healthy, or somewhere down the line it's gonna be hard to walk from the couch to the fridge to get that snack that you've been eating that got you in the position that you're in right now. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like, choose your hard. That's a real, I don't know if that's a David Goggins quote, but it works, and it applies here as well, and it applies to many aspects of life.
Yeah, and it's like you're saying, it is really hard when you first come to Orthodoxy and you're praying, like, to pray all the time.
Yeah,
like, wow.
To just do your prayer, to just wake up. The small things, the little things, those are some of the most important. Like, just waking up and doing the daily prayer rule. Just like, you know, as big or as small as it may be. It doesn't have to be super extensive and elaborate. The main thing, I think, is just staying on track and waking up and having something, prayer that you start your day with, Orthodox prayers that sets the rhythm for the rest of the day. Sets the pace for the rest of the day, and it puts everything in its proper place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a state of mind and a state of being you're in when you first wake up too, that what you do the first thing kind of sets the pace for the rest of the day, and it flows into the rest of your day. It's a real thing, and it's a real state of being you're in when you first wake up. So it's real important. The first, maybe the TV shows you watch, the music you listen to, whatever you're putting into yourself at the beginning of the day is going to affect you drastically throughout the rest of the day. And that bleeds into, you know, days and months and
microcosm, macrocosm.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. They get things right. Like you're saying, you're getting up and you're adjusting your frequency, or your eyes are the window to the soul. So,
right.
Like, what are you looking at the first thing in the morning?
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, prayer, like, it's so funny. Like, I would get up and like sun stare, because I wanted to lose
the sun gazing aspect.
But like, it's hard for me to wake up and do 10 minutes of prayer every morning. Like, I'll just be like, I gotta pray, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a level of,
I struggle still to this day.
Me too.
I have a struggle with it. Yeah. And there's sometimes where I just have to just kind of like push through it,
Yeah.
and just force myself, and
Which is the opposite though of what the world tells you. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be easy. And
Right.
that's why the hard part when you come to Orthodoxy, specifically also dealing with the church, like you have the Protestants, like I get to show up late. I have my coffee. I sit up.
Yeah, the coffee. There's no
Yeah.
coffee hour there. There's
Yeah.
no, none
Yeah.
of
Well,
that.
we have coffee after, but
Yeah, that's afterwards.
you
But it's a
can't-
different ball game, and you can't bring your
Exactly.
coffee into the church and just like, and there's a different way you sit. You don't like cross your legs in
Yeah.
the church. Like I'm sitting right here, I wouldn't be doing that in the
Yeah.
church because it's not a relaxed. You're supposed to let us attend.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be attentive. You're supposed to be paying attention, and you're supposed to be. And there's a certain posture that you're in to properly do that
Mm-hmm.
in the temple.
Yeah.
With reverence.
Yeah, but
with
people don't-
reverence.
But when you're worshiping yourself, who cares,
exactly.
right? Like, well, I'm uncomfortable. I want to cross my legs.
Exactly.
And that's that whole delusion. It becomes a spiritual delusion, and that's what Satan wants, is for you to fall in love with yourself. So you decide, right? You will decide.
So you can end up exactly where he ended up. He was
Yeah.
Lucifer. He was the angel of music, and
Yeah.
he was a
Intelligent.
beautiful angel, very, very
Yeah.
intelligent, beautiful, and he fell in love with himself and wanted to be praised like God,
Yeah.
and then fell and became the evil one.
Yeah. And what's so funny is if you're actually intellectually intelligent, you realize like you're not God. Like that was my experience. Is like I pushed it to the limit. I'm like, I'm not. Like
Yeah.
I there's no way I'd have to really lie to myself. I'm like, I can't sprout trees from the plains. I can't move the planets.
I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
I'm confused. That is a sign that I'm not God right there.
Yeah. I can't even stop. I can't start or stop my heartbeat. Like it's just the little things people take for granted, and then they think, oh, I. And again, this is where you get this ultimate like privilege, like with this. Oh, I deserve this. I like Orthodox is the opposite. Like, have mercy on me, a sinner. Like.
Exactly.
I have no right, the one morning prayer, like I fall down, but like, thank you for not being wrathful with me, a sinner. Like you have not earned the right to live another day. There's nothing you've done in your power. God can take your life away tomorrow if he wanted to. And you can sit here and argue with that. And people would be like, look at it in a way that you're all like, submissive. Like you've heard some of the people are like, oh, you're just a,
well, that's another way for them to pick at your ego, to get your pride back involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like the logisme. Oh yeah, you're just gonna bow down to some
passive.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some other man. You're just bowing down to man's rules and like not seeing that Christ appointed these people in the church to serve as spiritual fathers, just as the apostles served as spiritual fathers to the apostolic fathers who studied directly under them, and then the apostolic succession down the line 2,000 years all the way up to the day. You can trace it person by person all the way back to the apostles.
Mhm.
And that's directly in alignment with Christ. You have people like St. Ignatius of Antioch who sat on Christ's lap as a child.
Mhm.
And these are saints in our church. These are the apostolic fathers. These are the people that started the church that we are in today.
Yep, I agree, man. And it comes full circle. You just gotta keep, my stories is you keep pushing through. And I mean, we'll have to talk about getting through Protestantism maybe next time. That's a whole
because that's like a whole nother ball game right there. We touched
Yeah.
on it a little bit,
Because
but there's
that's-
a lot to get into right there.
Yeah, because that was my thing. I came back and I actually went into Catholicism because I was like, okay, I think this is the right way. And you look in the papacy and the Vatican and the sexual, like we had my hometown, my priest got in trouble for sexual stuff. So
Right.
it's pretty odd. And like
It's very prominent.
yeah, and it's not saying that Orthodoxy is perfect. But
Right.
Orthodoxy acknowledges it's not.
Well,
perfect.
here's the thing: you have priests that can marry in the Orthodox Church, and
Yeah.
I think